Hello, my name is Francisco Rosa. Today, I would like to go over what is a closing disclosure and explain the details of what information is contained in the document. First of all, a closing disclosure, or CD, is the final settlement statement that a buyer or seller would be expected to review and sign as part of a loan. You would expect to see the same document regardless of whether it's a purchase, a sale, or a refinance. Obviously, the information will be different for each party, but it's important to understand what information is contained in it and identify the most important parts that apply to you. What you see is page 1 of the closing disclosure. It usually identifies when it was issued. In this case, it was issued January 21, the year 2000, and it provides to you two separate dates, the closing date and the disbursement date. Now, if it's a purchase or an investment loan, both of those dates should be exactly the same. On the other hand, if you're conducting a refinance on a primary residence, the closing date would be one date and the disbursement date would be the 4th business day after, or after 3 days right of rescission, which is the law in Massachusetts, which is similar in other states. Below it, you will see the name of the settlement agent. In this case, Rosa and Tang Law. The office will usually have a file number tied to it. You will see the property address for the closing disclosure. In this case, 10 Main Street, Lowell, Massachusetts. What is the sales price? And then on the right side, you will see who is the borrower with their address, who is the seller with their address, and the name of the lender. On the far right, you will see what the loan terms are. Most loans are either 15 years or 30 years. Purpose, in this case, a purchase. Again, you might be looking at a refinance. And then finally, is this product a fixed rate loan or a variable rate loan? Now, the last question is, what kind of loan are you getting? Conventional or FHA or VA, and then the loan information. All personal private information on the original closing disclosure has been masked, so all the information you're looking at is hypothetical, but it resembles a true and actual closing. The next section of the closing disclosure provides you what we call the loan terms. First, you will see what is the original loan amount that you are borrowing, followed by the annual interest rate. And then the question, can this amount increase after closing, along with no and no? If your rate is variable, then the rate could change and you would see a yes. Then you see what your principal and interest is on a monthly basis. Now remember, if the loan is fixed, you will see a no right next to it. But even though that is what the principal and interest is, most lenders require that you also pay for escrows or PMI as part of a purchase. Therefore, your fixed monthly payment will be slightly higher. As of the date of closing, these are estimates with the exception of the original payment at the beginning of the period. The two next questions are, is there a prepayment penalty? And the answer is no. What does that mean? It means you have the right to make additional payments toward the principal every month or at any point in time, and you will not be penalized. Apart from that, there is no balloon payment. If you're wondering what a balloon payment is, it usually consists of a loan where you're only paying principal for the duration of the loan or for a fixed period, with the full balance being due at the maturity date or the due date of the loan. Next, we see a projection of your mortgage payments. Here, because the loan has mortgage insurance as indicated on the left, it is tied to the loan for the first 9 years. Subsequently, there is no mortgage insurance. So you have your fixed principal and interest, and you can check both columns, that will never change. Once you reach the 9-year period, there will be no mortgage insurance, therefore it's omitted on the right. And then finally, you have an estimated escrow payment of $257.23. What is the estimated escrow? Escrows are reserves or a deposit with the bank on a monthly basis for future taxes and insurance due. Here, you will see an explanation that the $257 are for property taxes. Yes, it's included in the escrow payment. And homeowners insurance. Yes, it's included in the escrow payment. So this borrower expected to start off with $1,233.97 each month. Now the projection for year 10 includes the same escrow payment, but there really is no way to know what the taxes and insurance escrow will be 10 years from now. So all we're doing is providing a good estimate. Now you see a summary of what the total closing costs will be, and then the borrower needed funds to close at the time of closing. So when they showed up for the closing, not only did they need to bring their ID, they needed a certified check for $4,476.32 as the balance of the closing. This accounted for purchase price minus deposit minus the loan amount plus closing costs. Second page of the closing disclosure provides an itemized summary of all the costs. In this case, we're looking at the buyer's closing disclosure. So many of the seller paid items may be omitted. In this case, they definitely are, because the seller still has expenses. They're just simply not reflected on this one. Please take a look at my review of seller closing disclosure where I go over those details. First of all, we start off with the bank charging the client 0.107 in points. That ends up being $219. Then you see an origination charge. Each lender provides the borrowers an initial closing disclosure that provides a list of itemized expenses that you can expect at the time of closing. Many of those are fixed, meaning they cannot change. Others will provide you only estimates. Here, apart from the point and the origination charge, you see the two charges, then you see the total balance for that section right above. The following column shows the remainder of the closing costs tied to the closing attorney and part of the loan. First, appraisal. Here you can see that it is on the right column, and the right column reflects it was paid before closing, along with the flood certificate. The borrower is being charged for their credit report, a closing protection letter, the closing attorney fee, courier fee, municipal lien certificate, a plot plan or survey, title exam, and title insurance. Again, the summary of all these charges at the very top. The following section did not have any charges, but depending on which lender you're working with, they might separate the fees in different columns. Here you see a summary of all the charges on this section: paid before closing, paid at closing, and the total of both. The next is the recording charges. The buyer or borrower is responsible for all recording charges with the state, municipality, or county. Here, the borrower is paying for the deed and a mortgage. In this case, the total recording charges to the state are $475. That is the full total being charged to the borrower. Now, on the left side, you see $155 and $205. That does not equal the $475, so the lender did not properly disclose the full fee, but I do know what the difference is. It's $115. In Massachusetts, we typically record a municipal lien certificate plus a declaration of homestead, so the total is always $475. Next, prepaid items. In this column, the borrower is shown what charges are being prepaid. You will always see the homeowner's insurance, and in this case it was paid prior to closing. That's why it's shown on the far right. If it was paid at closing, it would show up on the left column. Separately, the borrower will pay interest on the loan from the day of closing. In this case, it was January 22nd up to the end of the month. That ended up being $195.86. Whenever interest is charged up to the end of the month, there normally is no monthly payment the beginning of the month. So in this case, the borrower would not have a February 1 payment. Their first payment would be March 1. Next is the charge for the next quarter real estate taxes. Here you see the seller paying it, but although the seller is paying it, on page 3 we will see a prorated amount which adjusts taxes between buyer and seller. Next, we see what we call an initial escrow payment at closing. Basically, it's a deposit with the bank to start the escrow account because the lender expects to pay taxes and insurance in the future, and they cannot start with zero. They will start with a minimum deposit covering the next monthly payment. The lender's demonstrating that they've collected 3 months of homeowners insurance and 3 months of taxes, which is $771.69. The next section, listed under Other, reflects that the seller on this end is paying both the buyer agent's fee and the seller agent's fee, which is the amount indicated. Separately, rarely does the buyer have a separate attorney fee, but in this case, the buyer did have a separate attorney fee for a buyer's attorney, separate from the closing attorney, and their respective fee is shown on here. Apart from that, they purchase what we call an owner's policy of title insurance, which is completely optional, but it is reflected on the CD. Next, you will see a summary of all charges, fees paid at closing, fees paid before closing, and then at the very bottom, a lender credit. Lender credit simply reflects that the lender has given the borrower a credit towards the charges collected. The next section shows estimated loan costs from the moment that they applied for the loan compared to the final numbers at the time of closing. So you can compare that. Originally, the borrower would need $6,200 to close. They ended up needing $4,400, a lot less. As I explained before, the lender can never know for sure. All we can do is provide the best estimate. On this section, the far right represents the seller's transaction, which again I will review in a separate video. I'm only referring to the buyer's transaction for the moment. The first number that we see is how much is the purchase price, how much is the house being bought for. The next number is closing costs paid at closing. This is a summary or total of all charges that we just went over on page 2. If you recall, even though the seller paid the taxes for the following quarter, the buyer is still responsible from the day of closing till the end of the quarter. In this case, the quarter ends on March 31, so there is a prorated amount on a day-to-day basis, and the buyer is in effect paying the seller $433.77 for taxes already paid. The sum of all these fees is $221,476.32. Next is credits or fees already paid on behalf of the buyer or borrower. Here, they paid a deposit when they signed the purchase and sale agreement of $10,750. Next, they get a full credit of the loan amount, $204,250, because all charges associated with the loan are completely separate and apart, and we just went over them. Next, the seller gave a credit to the buyer of $2,000 towards the closing costs. That must have been part of the offer. The summary of all these charges is $217. At the very bottom, you see a summary of the how much they owe, how much is the credit, and how much we need from the borrower at the time of closing. There it is, a full and thorough explanation of what you typically see on a purchase. There is more information that I will also review on the following pages. First, the lender is obligated to let you know whether the loan is assumable or not. Most loans are not assumable. It just simply means If you were to sell the house, you can't tell the person, buy the house and continue to make the payments. The lender will not allow that. If you sell your home, you also need to pay off the loan and the buyer will get a new loan. Second, is there a demand feature? The answer is no, there is no demand feature. Now, what does that mean? In commercial context, the lender can let you borrow money, give you a fixed period of time to pay the loan, but if for whatever reason they're in the need of money, they can tell you, hey, that $1 million that we let you borrow and for which we gave you 10 years to pay, we need it now. Pay it back. That's a demand feature. On this end, because this is a residential loan, the borrower, so long as they keep up with their regular monthly payments and pay on time, have a full 30 years to pay on time. Next, if your loan is paid more than 15 days after the due date, the lender will charge you a 3% late fee. That's very typical of any loan. Next, negative amortization. There is no negative amortization. Now, what is negative amortization? In my own words, negative amortization simply means when you are making payments on a monthly basis, you are not paying the full interest accumulated, and in fact, the following month, you have a higher principal balance than you started with. That was the reason that we had a lot of problems in 2008, because a lot of people were deceived or tricked into getting loans that provided what we call artificially low monthly payments, and once the real payments kicked in, they were unaffordable. Partial payments. Will the bank allow partial monthly payments? The answer is no. You must pay your full monthly payment when due. If not received completely past the 15th of the month, the bank will charge you a late fee. Next, you will see that the account has an escrow account. First, the lender provides you an estimate of how much will the escrow account cost you over the following year in taxes and insurance. In this case, the estimated amount is $3,801.60. There are no escrow payments here. If you had a condo, you normally would see fees associated to the condo association because the lender does not escrow for those. You need to pay them directly. Separately, the bank took an initial deposit of $771 towards the escrow account, and on a monthly basis, the borrower will be paying $316.80. The next section shows you how much the lender thinks. Well, actually, the next section shows you how much all your payments will cost you if you made them timely. Never any early payments, never any late payments, never any fees or surcharges. So, in this scenario, the full total payments after principal and interest over the full 30 years is $339,481. How much will you have paid in interest? $133,843.99. Again, this is a number based on monthly and timely payments over 30 years, never paying early, never paying late. Next, you see how much you have financed. I always explain to my clients that this number is reflective of how much you're borrowing after we account for your closing costs, part of the transaction. Next is a number called annual percentage rate. This is not your annual interest rate on the loan, which is fixed and shown on page 1. This is an indicator for you to compare the loan to other loans, reflecting how much it's costing you to borrow the money. So it's interest plus closing costs. And the very last number, how much is the total interest percentage? 61.753%. In my own words, it simply means over the next 30 years when I pay off the loan in full, for every $100 that I borrowed, I will end up paying $161.75.3. So every $100 that you borrow will cost you $61 in interest. Now, if you pay early, pay ahead or pay off the loan, then that won't be true. This all assumes fixed monthly payments, never late, never early. There are other additional details on the far right, but for the moment, we're just going to skip to the bottom section. The closing disclosure must provide to you contact information for all parties involved. First, you will see who the bank is, what their address, what's their license number, the loan officer's name, their license number, their email, and their contact phone number. If your loan is directly with the bank, as was the case here, there will be no mortgage broker. On the other hand, many people get loans with a loan mortgage broker, therefore their contact info would be right here in addition to the actual lender of the money. Next, if there's a refinance, these next two sections would be blank because there are no agents involved. But when we have a purchase, there's both a buyer agent and a seller agent, property address, license numbers, their names, their emails, their phone numbers, and the settlement agent. The settlement agent is the closing attorney. In some states, it's not attorneys. You just have to be a settlement agent. In Massachusetts, you have to be an attorney to close on a real estate transaction. Finally, the borrower signs at the bottom indicated that they've read, understood, and agree with all the information provided. I hope this information was helpful. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any questions regarding the topics I covered, or if there's a specific topic you'd like me to cover in the future. Thank you for watching.